I'm Kevin Shaw, and you're watching the Watercraft Journal. Hey guys, Kevin Shaw here, Editor-in-Chief of the Watercraft Journal. If you've been paying attention for the last few years, you'll know that we're a bit of a fan of RIVA Racing's Pro Series Sponsons. These have been absolutely one of the best weapons of war when it comes to being one of the fastest, hardest handling, sharpest cornering guys on the water. Whether it's a supercharged Sea-Doo or an SVHO powered Yamaha, the Pro Series Sponsons have proven themselves on the racetrack and with your buddies out on the lake. For the last year, we've been running these Pro Series Sponsons on our 2021 RXP-X 300. We've taken them offshore, we've been up and down the lake, hundreds of miles on the river, and even through the natural slalom course of the bayou. But the question so many people have been asking is there someone out there who can compete against RIVA? Recently, the Watercraft Journal was contacted by the guys at PWC Art. They're an upstart company that is looking to make a dent in the performance aftermarket. They let us know that they had a very unique Sponson design for both the GP series Yamahas and the RXP-X Sea-Doo, and they really wanted us to try them out. They didn't necessarily want to shoot out against RIVA, but we thought, what the heck, since we've already got RIVAs on here, let's see how they do. Installation of the Race Diffusor Sponson is a little tricky, and there's not a lot of information out there, especially because PWC Art has just started their business and they really don't have much of an infrastructure out there. So really what we're showing you are some early model prototypes. But when these are ready to hit the market, we're guaranteed that everyone's going to be coming to this video to see how to install them. So we're going to show you every step of the way of how to install these properly so that you can get the most out of your personal watercraft. So many of you guys might not have ever heard of PWC Art, and you know what? We don't blame you, because they're brand new. These guys have made a big splash in the Thai market, especially with the athletes who are competing in the King's Cup every year. They're a little bit new to the rest of us, and that's why I was pretty excited to check them out. But one of the names you might recognize is Anthony Radicic, who races for Sea-Doo. He was one of the first athletes that we recognized running the Race Diffusor Sponson. Now, PWC Art is still a brand new company, and they're looking to launch their website and web store very soon. But they reached out to us to see what our thoughts were on the Race Diffusor Sponson. So we're going to show you every step of the way of how to install these little guys so that you can get the most out of your personal watercraft, whether you're cutting buoys or you're having fun out on the lake. Now, there's a lot that goes into the design of a successful Sponson, especially when it comes to a performance aftermarket piece. One of the things we liked most about the RIVA Sponson, besides its 5 points of adjustability, was the deep blade and the angle, or negative camber angle, if you can see that, of the blade and how it kicks out so far. Now, why we like that so much was as the watercraft comes into a turn, this blade goes from being kicked out to being vertical, becomes a vertical blade. This effectively makes it a straight, allowing it to cut like it's on rails. This is very unlike what you have with the factory Sponson. Factory Sponson has a very big, dull blade that barely has any kickout or any negative camber. So what about the Race Diffusor? The Race Diffusor is actually really unique, and there's a lot in this design that we have yet to really boil down. But what we're very interested in is the multi-angled running blade. If you look, it's almost like an impeller blade as it comes in like an S-turn. But if you look very closely, you'll see that as the top of the blade is kicking in, the inside kicks out. So we're looking at a really neat thrust stream that's allowed to move all that negative pressure out and keep this tracking all the way through the rear of the ski. So we're really excited to see all the design features that go into this. We're going to be doing a lot of hard turns, a lot of S-turns, just to see how well the tail stays hooked up and if really we can break it loose. Because that was the one thing that we found with the RIVA Sponsons, was that at a 3 setting or higher, we could break the tail loose. But at 4 and lower, sets 4 and 5, it was really, really grippy. It actually bit a little too much. So we're interested to see how the Race Diffusor and the RIVA Pro Series Sponson shape up against each other. Some other major differences between the RIVA Racing Pro Series and the PWC Art Race Diffusor is, besides the overall length of the blade and the tapered style of the blade, which puts the pivot point further forward on the Sea-Doo, and the very aggressive negative camber angle that we have, the Race Diffusor is a lot shorter than the RIVA and even shorter than the factory Sponson, and doesn't have that really aggressive camber angle that we were really liking about the RIVA. So we're interested to see how well it does. But as it has this very large blade that digs in, this has a very contoured, very angled blade that allows for a lot of different actions to happen in the water. The first step in installing your sponsons is getting the factory sponsons off and then cleaning off the surface. You're gonna find some extra silicone here, and that's just gonna be something that you're gonna wanna get rid of prior to installing your sponsons. The next step is installing your backing plate. The PWC Art Sponson has a machined backing plate with a little bit of a wing. This wing actually helps to set the outside sponson or the blade of the sponson. It doesn't help or do anything with the water. Now, what they do here is that they have these beveled machine surfaces where you're gonna wanna put your shouldered hex nuts that are gonna hold your blade in place. Now I'm holding the backing plate upside down, but the bottom edge is this flat edge. I'm holding it this way so that I can roll it up and attach it to the side of the hull without losing my hardware. But before I do so, it's important to put a bead of silicone all the way around the outer edge so that you don't get any water intrusion. With our backing plate and silicone on, we're gonna take our first piece of hardware, which is this Torx 45, and we're just gonna start it here just so that we can get some threads going. Now, before we start tightening down any of our hardware, we want to add a little bit of blue thread locker. The red stuff is way too tight. You'll never get it off. You'll probably cause damage if you do try to get it off. But now that we have everything sitting here just so that our silicone is lined up, we're going to take out one at a time, pull our cap, and add just a little bit of thread locker. We don't need to go crazy, all right? Even that was too much. And with that, we're ready to tighten them all down. One quick note was that these prototype backing plates indicate that of all the 4 positions that this bolt is able to go into, this line indicates 0 or neutral, okay? And we can adjust how we want our sponson to rest with these 4 locations. It's actually a really neat feature. We're gonna start with neutral and see if we want to go more aggressive or a little bit smoother as we continue to test throughout the day. With our backing plate installed, we can now install the blade. They provided us with 4 6mm Allen bolts that we can thread right into these shoulder nuts that we had on the back of the backing plate. Like before, we're going to install these loosely and then pull one out at a time and add a little bit of blue thread locker and then tighten them down as we move along. We applied a thin line of silicone along the flat edge of the blade. It wasn't detailed in the instructions, as these didn't really come with any instructions, but we felt it was a safe course of action, and if we were wrong, it wouldn't hurt anything. All right, so what's the final takeaway of the PWC Art Race Diffusor Sponsons? Well, in the day of testing that we did, we tried to put on as many hours as we could, cutting a lot of hard turns, trying to find some really decent chop. We obviously weren't going to find ocean level chop here on our lake on a quiet Thursday afternoon, but what we did find was enough that gave us a really good feel of how the Race Diffusor likes to keep the tail of the watercraft planted and allow a little bit of extra tracking ability. Now, the biggest differences that we found between the stock Sponsons, the RIVA Pro Series Sponsons, and the Race Diffusers is that the Race Diffusers do not rely upon displacement or drag, but rather water direction, and that is something really unique. In using a lot of hydrodynamic design, these sponsons are able to redirect water rather than just produce drag. Now, the drag is a really good coefficient for being able to get the watercraft to lean in, bite hard in the turn, and be able to hook around. In a lower speed corner, we found that the Race Diffusor works really good at initial bite in the roll-in and carries through really good, especially as you throttle into the turn. But in a high-speed turn, we found that the Race Diffusor carries the turn a little bit harder than most people who aren't professional racers are used to. That means that the tail of the ski is biting a lot harder than you might have been used to with the Pro Series Sponsons or the factory Sponsons. It's a little bit of an added behavior that isn't a deal breaker, but it's something that you will need to get used to. As we've shown, the Race Diffusor Sponsons do weigh a little bit more than the Pro Series Sponsons from RIVA, and a lot more than the molded plastic Sponsons that come from the factory. That added weight really doesn't make a factor for most people, but it is worth noting. In all, we think that these are a really good option for the casual rider and the aggressive rider who wants to get something a little bit better than the factory Sponson. Unlike the Pro Series Sponson that has the adjustability on the blade, allowing the blade to go higher or lower on the backing plate, the adjustability on the Race Diffusor is on the backing plate itself, meaning you got to take the whole blade off, adjust the backing plate, and then put the blade back on. And that adjustability really changes the angle and not the height so much of the total Sponson. This is really good if you're trying to force the nose up, because that Sponson is going to be able to bring that nose up when it's angled down. If you angle it the other way, it's going to force the nose down, which would be really good for a closed course racer. For the most part, we kept them at the neutral setting, and we found that those were the most enjoyable. One key issue that we encountered with the PWC Art Race Diffusor Sponsons is how they behave with the RXP-X when riding with two adults. This is obviously unusual, especially because the RXP-X comes with a single seat, but when equipped with a rear seat and the Race Diffusor Sponson, we found that traction suddenly vanishes. We also discovered that at low speeds, basically anything under 35 miles an hour, the RXP-X tends to wander and teeter-totter from left to right. This does not happen with the stock Sponsons, and this certainly doesn't happen with the RIVA Racing Pro Series Sponsons. So again, for those of you who are riding two up, you might want to take this into consideration. Again, the PWC Art Race Diffusor Sponson isn't ready for the public just yet. There isn't a lot we can point you to right now, but once the PWC Art Sponsons are ready for the public, we'll put out something out on www.watercraftjournal.com where everyone can link to it with the retail price. Until then, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel and to our newsletter at watercraftjournal.com, where new articles are published every single day, subscription free to you. And if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, and share it with your friends. It's going to help us grow the channel. And definitely hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the videos that we publish every single week, Sunday through Friday.